Welcome to the channel. Yes, this is Cooking with Abba. If you are new to the channel, you are so much welcome. Please do well to subscribe, do well to like, do well to share. Yay, my Waakye lovers. Yay, bringing to you Coconut Waakye Part 1. Part 2 will come very soon. And with your share waga meat. This is meat Waakye stew. Waakye stew is only Waakye stew or Waakye stew near Waakye stew. So for Waakye stew, you always need your herbs, your spices in there. So I had some black pepper, hwentia, cloves, Efomwisa, and some garlic as well. And I had some pepper, some red pepper, and my garlic. It's very necessary. Some tomato, onion, and of course you're going to need a bit of tinned tomato. And I blended all the vegetables together to get that, and of course my salt to taste. Waakye so you can't eat it without egg. You can't do waakye without waakye leaves, unless you want to do the plain waakye. Then waakye without beans is not waakye. And our key ingredient, our special ingredient, the coconut, and you have the rice because it's a rice dish. So you're going to also use a bit of onion to spice things up. And I had this spices, so it's mixed spices and a bit of fine salt and my meat. Yes. So to kickstart my waakye, what I do is to season my meat. Because I'm going to fry, I don't want it to be watery. So I washed my meat thoroughly to get rid of most of the blood around it. And when you wash it, try and get the water out of it. Try and mop the water a bit so it comes out a bit dry, because you're going to fry it. So you don't want so much water in there. So once that goes in, I add in my blended mixed spices, the regular spices I use. So I just blend those ones together, and just a bit of it, about a tablespoon is okay, and salt to taste. So you're just going to mix all of it up. Make sure that every part of the meat has some spice and salt. Yes, because you're not going to steam this, so you need to make sure the spice and okomiye pa. So when you do this, you do it nicely. Realize there's no water in there. Yes, even though the meat is still fresh, there's no water in there. Then when you're buying meat, please try and buy the red meat. Yes, it's a bit better around here, because sometimes the lean meat you see, the white meat you see around here, sometimes you can't really trust them like that. So if you're buying from the butchers or cold store, be very careful. Then what I did was I marinated this for a while. I think I didn't capture it well here, but then when I was done with the meat, I actually covered it up with a foil. Then I allowed it to sit for about 15 minutes so the spice would go in there properly. Unfortunately, I think I didn't capture it too well over here. So yeah, once you let it sit for a while, you just need to fry your meat. Fry your meat is the simple. Just use your medium heat and then leave your meat in there and be turning and turning. And once the meat is also on fire, do what? Start off with your beans. So I started by cooking my beans. My beans is already pre-soaked. When I'm doing waakye, I like to pre-soak my beans. I talked about the fact that beans today, when you pre-soak and you change the water, it helps reduce the gas in the interior. I've mentioned that before on this channel. So yes, when you're doing beans, just be careful. Add a bit of the leaves in to give the beans some color. And I didn't add salt as that. I'll add salt later. So you'll be turning your meat. Yes, as it's frying. Initial stages, you realize a bit of the blood will be oozing out. Yes, it's normal. So when you see it, don't be scared. The meat is going to ooze the blood in there. But that is the thing. It's safe. Yes. So because we're not going to steam before we cook it, yeah, don't worry. When the blood comes, just be turning it. That means that it is cooking nicely. So yeah, you just be turning it to make sure that every part of the meat gets well cooked. That's the most important thing. So once your meat is well done, you'd realize the outside part is going to be brown, and you know that yay, you are there. If you want it very dry, make sure that you leave it on for a very long time. But once it's cooking, you can also cover it up like I did here. Yes, and allow it to just use the heat to cook nicely. I realized mine was brown. You may think it was tough, but don't worry. When I was done with the stew, it wasn't tough. It was guy. No, it's fine, but I could eat it. Some of the meat is so hard, you have to pull like you're doing tug of war. But this we're not going to have it like that. I'm going to show you how to do it to avoid tug of war with your meat. So I just continued with my meat oil. After all my spices and my meat and all those things are in there, so I added in my onion. Yes, I know my style fights me, but don't worry. I added in my onion. Then when it's coming to fry, I added in the blended vegetables. I equally added in my spice when I was blending it. So you see some black inside. That's the spices. And I added my tin tomato paste. That's the right word, but we like to say tin tomato around here. So I added my tomato mix in there as well. Give it a good stir for all of it to come together beautifully. And then I just made sure that once that was done, I covered it for it to simmer and the heat to go in there well. So once that is also on fire, I check on the beans whether it's soft enough. Once it's soft enough, I'm going to add in my salt. Yes, I'm going to add in my salt. But before I added my salt, I just took out my Waakye leaves. Yes, because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to scoop out the beans. This is one method if you're a beginner to Waakye. It's good to do it like this. Because if you start with your beans and you add in your rice and everything, if you are new to it, don't take care. You finish and your rice will be softer, your beans will be tough. Or your beans will be too soft and your rice will be tough. So for me, when I started doing Waakye, this is how I used to do it till I upgraded a bit. So but it's up to you. So once it's getting almost cooked, you just add in your salt, then it cooks for a little while, you take it out. So this is beginner's guide to Waakye. Yes, if you don't go anymore, say I do like this. Make sure your beans is cooked before you take it out, then you later introduce it. So I'm going to boil my Waakye leaves. You realize my water in there is less. I want it to be very thick and consistent because I'm going to add in coconut, which is already a bit running. Then while that's on fire, I checked on my stew. You realize it's coming together beautifully. So I just added in my salt to taste. And at this point, I just add in my meat because it's not yet done cooking. Yes, I don't want the meat to be too tender. That was the idea. Because if your meat is too tender, it becomes tug of war. But as your Waakye stew is on fire, you check on your leaves. You realize the leaves, I'm getting it very thick and consistent. So it's very, very condensed. Yes, I did it deliberate because when I put in my coconut and the rice, I don't want it to finish cooking and I'll now be picking Waakye leaves for my Waakye. I don't really like Waakye that you serve and there are leaves in there. Yes, so I add in my coconut milk. I'm going to allow it to come to boil a bit before I add in my rice because I want the milk and things to come. You can try to do it without the fiber. So ideally or locally or traditionally, what is done is you just use a pure coconut milk. So when you blend or grate or whatever, you juice it out and remove the chaff. But I wanted a bit of the fiber in there. That's how come I use both of it. So like I was saying, the Waakye stew, once it's also coming together beautifully. It's not yet cooked, but then you realize that it's almost there. Then you add in your meat to it. So it's the meat to the stew would go into it a bit, and you can feel the stew when you're eating the meat. Yes. When you add in your meat last, it's as if you're eating stew with meat. But you should eat it and feel like this is meat in a stew. And the earlier you take it in there, the less tough your meat is going to taste. And your meat won't be a tug of war. This one is a tug of peace affair. So once that is on fire, you be checking on it to make sure that your stew is done. And at this point, my stew was done beautifully. You realize that it's a simple dish. Easy when you get a whole and want to surprise them. your first day at cooking waakye or something, when you do this, you get your points and go faster. And this is an easy way to go about waakye. That's the reality. It's a very easy way to go about waakye. So you realize my coconut milk to Charlie, it is boiling giddy 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 giddy. This is how you want it to get to before you add your rice. So yes, once it's boiling giddy 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 giddy, you add in your rice, but before that, and then you add in your salt to taste. Yes, you realize I cooked the beans with salt. So when I'm added my rice, you need to check whether the salt is okay before you add in more salt. Yeah, that's one thing to note. And I brought it to boil. I left it to cover up and bring it to boil. So when it's boiling, you need to be checking. Once you realize the water goes down, you'd have to come and stir. And see, my beans is cooked, perfectly cooked. Yes, you want your beans to be cooked before you add it in. So at this point, the water has gone down and your heat has to go down at this point. Whenever you're cooking rice and the water goes down, you need to reduce your heat. And you realize my waakye is actually almost done. The beans is also cooked. So at this point, I just incorporate the beans into the waakye. And for me, this was one way I used to do waakye most part of my life. So when I started, because Charlie, you are safe foul. You can do waakye that the beans is soft, the rice is hard, or beans is hard and the rice is soft. So if you're new to waakye, this would save your soul. The only risk is sometimes the leaves, you may end up coloring the beans more than coloring the rice. That's one thing. So for me, when I'm coloring my beans, beans easily take the color. I just use 1 or 2 full strips of the sorghum leaves, the waakye leaves. But then aside that, yeah, I don't really give it so much worry. Then you cover with your napkin and then you leave it to come to boil. And see, Charlie, after 10 minutes and nice. Waakye akono. Guy waakye. High level, anti-level. Charlie, waakye or taste or texture. You see how soft it is. Ghana waakye has to be a bit soft, and you can massage it with your hands. And you serve your waakye with your gari, macaroni, Italia, and all those ones. Yes. But this day is a simple day. Today we're going very simple. So just your waakye with your egg, your meat stew, a little bit of gari, a little bit of, stew around it. Your simple waakye recipe you should try. Easy, try for extra point too. So don't worry, we'll be coming again with our part 3 waakye. Till then, bye-bye.